The millionaire stepped into the dusty lobby, and the first thing he heard was laughter. Not friendly laughter, mocking laughter. Sir, you really bought this dump?" One of the town workers sneered, leaning against the cracked reception desk. Nobody's stayed here in 20 years, except ghosts." A few men chuckled. The millionaire, Daniel Harper, didn't respond. He simply looked around the old motel, the peeling paint, broken lights, and faded sign outside that read, "Sunset Valley Motel." But one thing caught his eye. A hallway at the back, and a single door with a heavy chain. 20, the manager, an older man named Carl, quickly stepped in front of him. Sir, you don't want to go there," Carl said nervously. That room's been locked for 30 years. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Why?" he asked calmly. Carl swallowed. Because something bad happened in there. 30 years earlier, the motel had been busy. Travelers, truck drivers, families on vacation. Room 20 was just another place to sleep, until one night, a young housekeeper named Maria Lopez had entered room 20 to clean. She never came out. The police investigated, but they found no body, no struggle, no clues. Just her cleaning cart and an open window. The town whispered about it for years. Some said she ran away. Some said she was kidnapped. Others believed something darker. After that, the motel slowly lost customers. Rumors spread. Business died. Eventually, the owner abandoned the place, and room 20 stayed locked. Now, decades later, Daniel Harper had bought the property for cash. The townspeople thought he was crazy. "Millionaires don't buy haunted motels," one man joked. But Daniel had a reason, a very personal reason. He walked slowly down the hallway, his expensive shoes crunching on broken tiles. Dust floated in the air. Carl followed behind him, sweating. "Sir, please," he said. "It's not safe." Daniel stopped in front of room 20. The chain hung tightly across the door. Rust covered the metal. The number 20 was barely visible. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. Carl's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he unlocked the chain. The metal clanged loudly, echoing through the empty motel. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the workers at the front desk stopped talking. Daniel grabbed the doorknob. It wouldn't move. He pushed harder, still stuck. Then, with one strong shove, crack, the door burst open. A cloud of dust exploded into the hallway. Carl stumbled backward. "Sir, wait!" he shouted. "You don't know what's inside?" But Daniel stepped in anyway. The room smelled like old wood and forgotten memories. Furniture sat exactly where it had been left decades ago. A bed covered in gray dust, a small table, a broken lamp. Sunlight streamed through the dirty window. Daniel walked slowly across the floor, his heart pounding. He wasn't afraid. He was searching. Suddenly, creak, the floorboard beneath him shifted. He froze. Carl peeked inside, trembling. "Did you hear that?" Daniel nodded. He knelt down and brushed dust away from the floor. There, hidden beneath the carpet, was a loose wooden panel. Carefully, he pulled it up. Underneath was a small metal box, rusty, locked, heavy. Carl gasped. "That wasn't there before," he whispered. Daniel stared at the box, his hands shaking slightly. For 30 years, this secret had been waiting. He slowly opened the latch. Inside, there were only 3 things: a faded photograph, a gold necklace, and a folded letter. Daniel picked up the photograph first. It showed a young woman in a housekeeper uniform. She was smiling brightly. Standing beside her was a little boy. The boy had messy hair and wide eyes. Carl leaned closer. "That's Maria," he said softly. Daniel swallowed hard. "I know," he replied. Then he picked up the necklace. A small pendant hung from the chain. Inside the pendant was another tiny photo. The same boy. Carl's voice trembled. "Ha!" Daniel took a deep breath. "That's me." Carl stared at him in shock. You're her son." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes." His voice cracked for the first time. "My mother worked here when I was 6 years old. She told me she'd finish her shift and come home." He paused. But she never did. The hallway fell silent. Even the workers who had followed them now stood frozen, listening. Daniel unfolded the letter carefully. The paper was yellow and fragile. He read it aloud. "My dear son, if you ever find this, I want you to know I love you more than anything. I discovered something terrible about the motel owner. He was hiding money and illegal records in this room. I tried to report him, but he found out. If I disappear, promise me you'll live a good life. Be brave, be kind, and never stop searching for the truth. Love, Mom." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. For 30 years, he had wondered what happened. Now he finally knew. Maria hadn't run away. She had been silenced. One of the workers spoke quietly. "So, what are you going to do now?" Daniel wiped his face. Then he stood up straight. His voice became calm and steady again. "I'm going to honor her." He walked out of room 20 and into the sunlight outside the motel. The townspeople had gathered, curious about the noise. They watched as the millionaire stepped onto the cracked pavement. For years they had laughed at him. Now they waited. Daniel looked at the old sign above the building. Then he turned to the crowd. "This place will reopen," he announced. Murmurs spread through the group. "But it won't be just a motel." He pointed toward the building. "It will become a shelter for single mothers and their children. A safe place where no one has to disappear or be forgotten, way forgotten." Silence filled the air. A woman in the crowd wiped tears from her eyes. Carl stepped forward slowly. "Why would you spend your money like that?" he asked. Daniel looked back at room 20. Then he smiled gently. "Because a poor housekeeper once sacrificed everything to protect the truth. And her son." The crowd lowered their heads in respect. No one laughed anymore. Months later, the building stood completely transformed. Fresh paint covered the walls. Bright lights replaced the broken ones. Flowers bloomed along the walk. A new sign hung above the entrance. Maria's Haven families moved into clean rooms. Children played safely in the courtyard. Mothers found support and hope. And at the end of the hallway, one door remained special, room 20, but it was no longer locked. Inside, a framed photograph of Maria hung on the wall. Below it was a small plaque that read, "A courage is not about being rich. It's about remembering where you came from." On opening day, Daniel stood quietly near the entrance. A little girl ran up to him and hugged his leg. "Thank you, sir," she said. Daniel knelt down and smiled warmly. "You're welcome," he replied. Across the courtyard, the townspeople watched him with admiration. The same man they once mocked, now they respected, because the millionaire didn't buy the motel to make money for Plummet. He bought it to find the truth and to give others a future. Respect always comes to those who never forget their past.